My daughter's new husband smirked as he said, "This is the fat pig we have to put up with." The laughter that followed felt colder than the Texas air outside that hall. But I didn't flinch. I simply straightened my shoulders, smiled politely, and waited for the truth to walk into the room. And when his elegant mother turned, her voice trembled. "Wait, aren't you my new boss?" That was the moment everything shifted, and trust me, the story was only beginning. Before I continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The sun filtered through the cedar branches as I parked outside the venue in Dripping Springs. Spring air carried the faint scent of champagne and grass, and I could already hear laughter echoing from the open barn doors. I arrived early, as I always did, never wanting to rush, never wanting to be a burden. The place was elegant, trimmed with white ribbons and tables dressed in linen. I paused at the entrance where a signboard listed the seating chart. My name was there, written in soft gold ink. Except it wasn't my name. It said, Alice Marin, not Arliss. I smiled. The kind of polite smile people wear when they aren't sure whether to correct a stranger or just take the insult home. A young coordinator in a headset caught my eye and waved. "Hi there. Vendor support, right? You can use the side entrance." I wanted to say, "No, dear. I'm the mother of the bride." But instead, I nodded. The way she said vendor wasn't cruel. It was worse than cruel. It was casual. It was how people place you without even knowing they're doing it. When I found my seat, I realized it was tucked right beside the restroom door. Every time the door swung open, a wave of citrus cleaner drifted across my plate. From the head table, laughter rippled and shimmered under the string lights. I could see my daughter Celine through the glass wall, her gown glimmering as she leaned close to her new husband. My heart felt both proud and misplaced. The polished floor reflected me like a faded watercolor. I adjusted the napkin, the silverware, the little place card that said Alice. I thought about moving it closer to the main table, but no. Let them see, I noticed. Let them see, I stayed. A few minutes later, one of the bridesmaids floated by, perfume heavy as magnolia. She didn't look at me directly, just reached for the place card, fingers perfect and burgundy tipped. She slid it backward, toward the vendor section. I caught her reflection in the mirror across the room. It wasn't anger I felt. It was a deep, hollow recognition, like watching someone erase a chalk line you'd drawn too quietly. Then came the photographer. "Okay, family first," he called out. I stepped forward instinctively, but he raised his hand. "Let's get the inner circle first, ma'am." So I stepped back, flash after flash. My daughter's laughter, her husband's arm tight around her waist. When the Polaroid printed, I caught sight of myself in the corner of the frame, half a sleeve, half a smile. I kept it anyway. Proof, maybe, that I existed there, even if the world refused to frame me whole. I left the photo area to breathe, wandering the hallway lined with framed landscapes. Two voices carried from behind the floral arch near the service corridor. One whispered, "She's declining, right? Maybe assisted living. Keep her comfortable." The words dropped like pins in a metal tray, sharp, echoing. I didn't turn around. I didn't correct them. I just memorized the sound of their tone, cool and administrative, as if I were a form to be filed away. When I returned to the main room, the dinner music had started. I smiled, steady and small. Near the kitchen door, a young server struggled with his tie, his hands shaking. I reached out, adjusted it, and said, "This is still my daughter's day. Let's make it beautiful." He smiled back, and for a second, the world was kind again. I sat down, folded my napkin, and held my smile. The chandeliers glowed like captured sunlight as I took my seat again. The scent of roasted rosemary chicken floated across the tables, and laughter rolled from the head table where Celine and Dylan sat surrounded by their new family. The MC tapped a spoon against a glass. "Let's have a few words from family members," he said. My hand trembled slightly as I lifted my glass. I wanted to say something simple. Just, "I'm proud of you, sweetheart." But before I could rise, Dylan stood up, his smile already rehearsed. "To my wife," he said, "and to her family, every branch of it." Laughter rippled politely. Then he added, "Even the ones that still think Facebook is a family tree." People laughed louder. I smiled, a still photograph among moving faces. My glass hovered, untasted. The moment turned when he reached for another bottle. "Let me pour for everyone," he announced, loud and theatrical. His hand swayed just slightly too far. The red stream arced through the golden light, splashing across my lap, blooming across the fabric of my dress. $5,000 of silk and dignity. For a breath, silence swallowed the room. Then came the whisper, "Now you look as cheap as you really are." I didn't know whose voice it was, his mother's echo, or the crowd's shared thought. Someone gasped. Someone else chuckled, quickly stifled. I heard my heartbeat in my ears, steady, defiant. I dabbed the napkin across the stain and said nothing. Celine froze mid-laugh. Her mouth stayed curved, but her eyes begged me not to make a scene. Across from her, Dylan's mother, Carol, pressed her lips into a smirk and whispered something behind her wineglass. The string quartet tried to fill the silence, bowing faster. I felt my body detach, as though I were watching it happen to someone else. The lights blurred. My reflection glimmered in the surface of my own wineglass, a red halo trembling at the rim. I memorized the sound of every false laugh, the way the air itself refused to move. I told myself, observe, remember. Not yet. Carol glanced my way again, this time properly seeing me. The smirk faltered. "Wait," she murmured to someone beside her, voice too loud to be secret. "Isn't that Arliss Marin?" Then louder still, "My God, that's my new boss." Dylan's face went white. Celine's hand dropped from her wineglass to her lap. The air cracked like a live wire. For one small, perfect moment, every eye turned to me, not as the forgotten mother, not as the mistake at the wrong table, but as the woman whose signature could decide their future. I met Carol's stare and nodded once. Nothing more. Silence carried its own weight. From then on, Carol's voice changed color. "Oh, Mrs. Marin," she cooed. "How dreadful! What an accident!" Dylan mumbled an apology, tripping over the words. I placed the napkin gently over the stain, white over red, calm as stone. "Accidents happen," I said, steady enough to still the tremor in my hand. Dinner resumed. Conversation thinned. I caught sight of a phone screen nearby, a cousin posting a photo of the family group. I was cropped out entirely. Only the edge of my sleeve remained, as if even pixels agreed I didn't belong. I smiled at that too. Evidence, I thought. Patterns repeat themselves. By dessert, people had stopped pretending. Forks clinked, chairs scraped. I rose quietly, gathered my shawl, and smiled toward the table. "Excuse me," I said. My tone carried no bitterness, only finality. As I turned, I felt their eyes on my back, curious, guilty, afraid. I looked once more toward Celine, who still hadn't moved, and offered a last, perfect smile. It meant nothing to them. To me, it meant control. The drive home from Dripping Springs was silent except for the hum of the tires against the dark road. My dress, still damp from the wine, clung cold against my legs. When I walked into my house, I didn't turn on the television or pour another drink. I took off the ruined gown, draped it over the back of a chair, and stared at it under the kitchen light. The stain had turned blackish in the fabric's folds, an ugly bruise spreading through silk. I filled a basin, mixed salt and soda, and began to clean. The smell of iron and soap filled the room. It wasn't about saving the dress. It was about reclaiming the moment. By the time I rinsed the final streak away, the shaking in my hands had stopped. I opened the safe beneath my desk, slid in the folded invitation, the catering receipt, and the stained napkin. Then I whispered aloud, "Evidence." The next morning, I made coffee, black and strong, and pulled out a leather notebook that had sat unused for years. I wrote on the first page in careful block letters, "Paper trail." Below that, date, Saturday. Incident, wedding reception. Witnesses, approximately 60. My pen scratched against the page with the rhythm of a heartbeat. I wrote what I remembered, not what I felt. Don't argue, record. The words steadied me. The overhead light flickered once, casting my reflection against the window pane. For the first time in days, I didn't look like someone humiliated. I looked like someone building a case. By Monday, the spring air in Austin felt heavy with pollen and promise. I walked into the glass lobby of my downtown office, my heels echoing on marble. The receptionist greeted me with a nervous smile. News travels fast in corporate circles. Kirill was waiting by the elevators, her expression bright and brittle. "Morning, Arliss," she chirped, clutching a folder too tightly. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" I smiled just enough. "It is," I said, pressing the elevator button. When we reached the 3rd floor, I held the door for her. "After you." She hesitated, then stepped out. In my office, I reviewed a policy file for an internal audit that happened to include her department. I picked up my pen and signed a recusal form, ensuring full transparency. Every stroke of ink felt like quiet justice. By noon, HR called, "Ms. Marin, we received an anonymous complaint this morning about your conduct at a private event." The voice on the other end was neutral, practiced. I didn't ask who sent it. I already knew. Dellen's grammar was distinct, his overuse of semicolons impossible to miss. "Understood," I said calmly. "You'll find documentation in your inbox, time-stamped." Within minutes, I sent the scanned logbook entries, photos of the dress and napkin, and a screenshot of the event invitation. I included a note, all details verified and cross-referenced. An hour later, HR replied, "Thank you, Ms. Marin. This clears up the confusion. No further action needed." The words glowed on my screen like a seal of truth. The next day, I passed by Carol's glass-walled office. She was on a call, her face pale, her lips thin. She saw me through the frosted partition and froze. Between us, the reflection of my outline shimmered faintly. 2 women divided by transparency. I didn't slow down. I didn't smile. I simply walked past, my footsteps even and sure. Power, I realized, didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered through quiet halls. That night, I opened my logbook again. The pen tip hovered for a moment before I wrote, "Outcome, complaint dismissed, maintain record." I drew a small check mark next to it, the first of many. Closing the cover, I exhaled. It wasn't revenge. It was protocol. The doorbell rang just after 10, the kind of sound that cuts through a quiet Texas morning. When I opened the door, a courier stood on my porch holding a certified envelope with my legal name printed in bold type. I signed for it, thanked him, and watched the truck drive off through the bright South Austin sunlight. Inside, I broke the seal and unfolded the contents. Notice of correction. According to the letter, my house deed required an ownership alignment. The words looked harmless, almost bureaucratic, but my pulse quickened. The watermark carried the Travis County seal, the kind used on official filings. Still, something was off. Too smooth, too deliberate, as if someone had borrowed legitimacy for intimidation. I laid the letter flat on the kitchen counter and exhaled slowly, reminding myself, panic solves nothing. I fetched my reading glasses and a yellow highlighter from the drawer. Sitting at the table, I read the document line by line. The phrasing was vague. Family asset harmonization. Cooperative transition of title. My highlighter glowed over each ambiguity like a trail of warning lights. At the bottom, there were dates that matched the week of the wedding. My lips tightened. Their cruelty hadn't stopped at wine and laughter. Now it had paperwork. Beneath the calm surface of my handwriting, I circled each line that hinted at coercion. The kitchen clock ticked evenly. It was the sound of focus replacing fear. I called the Travis County Clerk's office. A woman named Denise answered, her tone brisk but kind. I read her the file number. After a pause, she said, "Ma'am, that's not an official correction. It's a private draft. Someone pretending to initiate a change. She recommended I come in person to verify." I thanked her, took down her name, and wrote it neatly in my logbook beneath the words, "Deed intimidation attempt. Probable family source." Then I set an appointment for noon, by lunchtime. I stood beneath the fluorescent lights of the clerk's office. The line moved slowly. People with property disputes, title changes, mortgage releases. The air smelled faintly of toner and paper dust. When my turn came, Denise recognized me from the phone. She printed my chain of ownership, date stamped and sealed. "No gaps," she said. "No legal actions filed." Relief, crisp and clean, washed through me. I requested a written notice of no change for my files. The printer hummed, and the clerk slid the page forward, a single sheet that confirmed what I already knew. They had tried to weaponize paper and failed. Back home. I noticed a dark sedan parked across the street. The driver wore sunglasses, motionless behind the wheel. Hours later, when I returned from checking the mailbox, a card had been slipped under my door. Private Research Services. No name, no phone number, just an embossed logo. I logged the time, the plate number, and taped the card inside my paper trail. Unease brushed my skin, but not fear. Fear is loud. This was quiet and sharp, the kind of feeling that teaches you to document. That evening, I composed an email to corporate counsel. The subject line read, "Personal privacy, FY." No accusations, no drama. I explained the incident briefly and attached the notice of correction letter. Within an hour, counsel replied, "Acknowledged. Will initiate firewall protocols. Your personal and professional records remain separate." It wasn't comfort I sought, only clarity. The line between my life and theirs needed to stay intact. The next afternoon, I met a retired title officer at a small coffee shop on South Congress. His name was Hal, over the hum of espresso machines. He scanned the letter I'd brought. "It's intimidation," he said. "They want you to sign something out of fear. Happens more than you think, especially within families." His tone carried neither pity nor surprise, and I appreciated that. He advised a notarized rejection and a standing no-contact notice to preempt future filings. I nodded, grateful for the precision of men like Hal, the ones who know that paperwork can defend as much as it can destroy. By dusk, I sat at my desk again, the light outside turning amber through the blinds. I signed a notarized refusal, made 3 copies, and sealed each one in separate envelopes addressed to every name listed in the letter. As I walked to the mailbox, the street was quiet, only cicadas breaking the stillness. I dropped the envelopes in, hearing the soft thud of finality. Then I wrote one last line in my logbook. I do not negotiate my home. The ballroom at the JW Marriott shimmered with glass and noise. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light over linen-covered tables. The kind of setting meant to flatter everyone equally while reminding you of the pecking order. A sponsor wall gleamed with corporate logos and family names. I spotted Carol across the room, air-kissing the committee chair, her smile so bright it hurt to look at. I scanned the layout: head table, press riser, donor queue. Control was built into the seating chart. When I signed in, a young volunteer handed me a small badge marked Friends, a demotion from benefactor. Though my check had paid for a third of this year's science grant, I noted the badge size, the ink color, the subtle downgrade. In a world like this, hierarchy wore silk and smelled faintly of perfume. At my seat, I opened the printed program. My eyes halted on the second page. Under Key Tribute, Carol's name appeared, followed by her family's generous support of the District Learning Fund. That fund was my project, months of negotiation with city education officers, grant reviewers, and private donors. My name appeared 3 lines below under supporter. The word felt like a smudge. I asked the event coordinator where the copy came from. Her eyes flicked toward Dellen's table, then down again. I smiled, thanked her, and slipped the program into my purse after photographing it. Timestamp 12:07 p.m. Evidence wears paper, too. A man in a blue suit guided me toward a side table with junior staff members. "We thought you'd enjoy the energy," he said. At the head table, Carol was arranging centerpieces, greeting board members as if auditioning for sainthood. "You've met Arliss?" she said, voice warm but angled. "She's been involved for years." No mention of the grant itself. I replied evenly, "Lovely to see everyone again." The young staffers smiled politely, unaware of the demotion happening in plain sight. I focused on my fork, counted breaths. Patience is also a kind of armor. When the lights dimmed for the speeches, Carol took the stage in her coral jacket, posture flawless. "Our family believes in giving back," she said. Her husband clapped. Michelle held up her phone. Recording. I heard phrases I had written months earlier. Legacy, guidance, resources, parroted with the polish of a campaign ad. Cameras flashed. A lifestyle blogger snapped photos of the sponsor wall where my name had been shrunk to lowercase. My chest tightened, but my face didn't move. Instead, I opened the Notes app and typed the words verbatim. Data is what outlives gossip. Then came the MC's voice. "We have a special acknowledgement." That was supposed to be my cue. I stood, walked toward the small podium, adjusted the mic. "Thank you," I began. The sound cut to silence. My lips moved, but the room heard nothing. The technician shrugged behind the console, mouthing dead channel. The MC leaned in with a laugh. "We're a bit over time, thank you so much." Laughter rippled through the tables. I smiled, nodded, and sat down. Inside, the humiliation burned, steady and bright. I wrote on my program, mic cut 12:43 p.m. Minutes later, while dessert was served, a woman in a floral blazer leaned over. "I heard you're transitioning to assisted living," she whispered, voice syrupy. So admirable. The phrase matched the whisper I'd overheard at the wedding corridor. Someone was feeding her lines. I met her eyes and replied softly, "Please verify your sources." Then I handed her my card. Her expression faltered. Let them carry the discomfort for once. When the applause swelled for closing remarks, I rose and walked to the donation desk. "I'd like to make an additional contribution," I said. The staffer looked startled. I slid a check across the table. Restricted gift. STEM scholarships. Media acknowledgement required to list the funder exactly as written. Her eyes widened when she read the stipulation. "Of course, Miss Arliss," she said. My voice stayed calm. Accuracy matters. It always had, though few noticed until the moment it was enforced. As guests filtered toward the elevators, Carol floated over, perfume first. "So lovely you could make it," she cooed. "What a wonderful day." I noticed the sound had trouble. I said lightly. She blinked. "Oh, just a technical glitch." "Of course." I smiled, as if we agreed on everything. Outside, the air was bright and unfiltered. I opened my phone, snapped a picture of the donation receipt, and logged the note. Restricted gift filed, narrative redirected. The ballroom laughter faded behind the glass doors. I had no microphone, but I'd taken back the story anyway. Monday morning, the elevator doors slid open with their usual chime, but what greeted me was not routine. A new bronze plaque shimmered beside the lab foyer, its engraving catching the fluorescent light just enough to sting. Legacy funded by the Relin family, my name, misspelled, minimized, 8-point font, sat beneath it like an afterthought. Program friend. I took 3 photos from different angles, time-stamped them, including the mirrored reflection of Kirill's printed photo taped next to it. The facilities tag below revealed a Sunday install after hours. That wasn't allowed without departmental approval. I emailed facilities before sitting down. "Please send work order Nushantier attached to plaque install. Needed for donor variance tracking. No exclamation point, no punctuation of emotion. Just record, verify, preserve." By 8:30, Dellin appeared in the hallway with a coffee he didn't make himself. "Mom," he began, as if saying the word softened the edge. "This is optics. Don't overread." "Optics," I repeated. "Optics that rewrite credit become policy if unchallenged." His smile twitched. Development handled it. He didn't look me in the eye. I logged every phrase verbatim. Optics. Don't overread. Development handled. Then I walked away. At my desk, the donor recognition policy PDF glowed on my monitor. Clause DR 4.2, second paragraph. No entity or individual may alter naming conventions for restricted gifts without express donor approval. I highlighted it. Open the email thread from Saturday's donation and attach screenshots, the charity stipulation, the plaque photo, the policy citation. Subject line, variance from DR 4.2, naming without donor consent. I didn't copy PR. I copied compliance. Quiet policy was my armor. Before lunch, Outlook pinged. Wellness check-in, HR and culture. Attendees, 2 HR reps and 1 new name. Advisor, family integration. Location, small, windowless conference room. No agenda attached. I accepted the invite, then replied, "Please include agenda per HRM 1.9. Recording enabled line required for transparency." I CC'd counsel koharalawgroup.com, the generic inbox my labor attorney had provided last year for unforeseen needs. An analyst from compliance caught me at the printer. "Got your packet," he said softly. "That was clean work. We'll log it as a variance." His tone was dry but human. "Facilities ticket 7124. Photos help. If you can, capture the signature on that order." He gave a small nod, the kind bureaucrats reserve for quiet wars. The wellness check-in began at 2. 3 chairs, soft beige upholstery, a pitcher of cucumber water, 2 HR staff smiled with corporate warmth. The third, the so-called family integration advisor, tilted her head like she was assessing a patient. "We've heard some concerns," she began, "about retirement pathways and external support options. Assisted living—" "Stop there," I said evenly. "Before this continues, I need the agenda confirmed. Is this performance-related?" "It's just wellness," she said quickly. "Then let's follow HRM 2.3, I said, opening my folder. "External familial narratives are irrelevant to my role. Please restrict to job-related topics." The air changed. Paper shuffled. One HR rep cleared her throat. The advisor folded her hands and said, "Understood." The meeting lasted 10 more minutes. Nothing else of substance was said. But I had the recording, saved to cloud and flash drive, both encrypted. That evening, I sat at a picnic table near the 2nd Street food trucks, plastic fork hovering over coleslaw, when my old mentor, a retired HR manager, arrived with 2 teas. "You're handling it the right way," she said. "Parallel track, documentation and counsel. Stay procedural, not emotional." "I'm not angry," I said. She smiled. "Good. Anger wastes time." By 9, I'd scheduled a preliminary consult with a labor attorney. I attached my memo, plaque photos, and the HR invite chain. His reply came at 9:42 p. Imheim. Short checklist, retaliation markers, reputational harm, policy breaches, and one note: preserve CCTV request for Sunday install. I closed my laptop. Outside. The air smelled of grilled onions and rain. I opened my logbook, wrote the date, then added the line: outcome pending, documentation expanding. The email arrived before sunrise. A PDF attachment from facilities titled Completed Work Order, Legacy Plaque Installation. I opened it with the same deliberate calm I'd used to cut into a sealed envelope from a lawyer. The signature line read, D. Relin, Director. But I knew my own pen strokes, and this wasn't one of them. The loops were too perfect, too rehearsed. My signature always dipped slightly on the second L. I pulled an archived memo from 6 months ago and placed the two side by side. Different angle, different ink weight. A forgery. My pulse slowed rather than quickened. I wasn't shocked anymore. Just precise. By 7:30, I'd requested the access logs for Sunday. The facilities tech replied quickly, attaching a spreadsheet marked cleaned copy. Most badge scans were there, except for one blank line labeled Visitor, no ID. I scrolled down and checked the metadata. Edited Monday, 6/17. The same hour, HR scheduled that wellness meeting. Patterns were beginning to align like magnets under paper. I took screenshots, renamed them by timestamp, and stored them in my encrypted folder. At noon. I sat across from Elaine at a corner table in the coffee shop facing City Hall. Steam rose from her cappuccino as she slid her phone across the table. "My daughter interns in facilities," she whispered. On her screen, grainy footage from Sunday evening. Carol and her husband walking through a side door, a contractor badge clipped to his jacket. Carol's smile was casual, familiar. I exhaled through my nose. Not surprise, confirmation. "Keep that image private," I said quietly. "If anyone asks, you never showed me." Elaine nodded. Understood. The call from Dellin came 2 hours later. "Mom," he started, voice thin as wire. "Can you stop? You're making things worse." "For whom?" I asked. "This isn't personal. It's business." I let the silence expand. He inhaled shakily. "Kirill's dad's firm has a deal pending with the hospital board. Renaming the plaque. It looked better for them." My stomach didn't twist. It flattened. "You chose her comfort over my name." He muttered something about partnership optics before the line went dead. I wrote every word down. That evening, I returned to my desk, opened my email archive, and began tracing headers. One thread jumped out, a forwarded message from Carol's personal Gmail to the PR office. Subject line, draft plaque phrasing. Attached, my original donor form, metadata tag reading, modified by D. Rellin Jr., her brother. The chain of collusion was complete, family to corporate, sealed with a digital fingerprint. I saved the file twice, once to the cloud, once to a USB I kept taped under my desk drawer. When dusk settled, I cleared the wall in my living room and taped everything up: plaque photos, the blank access log, the email thread, the still frame from Elaine's video. Each document got its own yellow sticky note. Deal leverage, optics, inheritance narrative. From a distance, it looked like a detective board. From up close, it was just my life, reassembled into evidence. At 9, my attorney's email pinged through, Friday, 10 a.m. Confirmed. Bring originals. Forgery within a public institution may carry criminal exposure. Recommend self-notarized summary and off-site backup. I read it twice, then printed it, initialing the corner out of habit. The printer hummed steadily, an oddly reassuring sound. I turned off the lights. In the window, my reflection floated against the downtown skyline, city lights blinking like chandeliers from someone else's celebration. I whispered into the quiet. They used my legacy as collateral. The room didn't answer, but the files on my wall did, each page waiting for the next move. Thursday morning began with the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. 6 missed calls, 12 text messages. When I opened my email, the subject line burned across the screen. Hospital benefactor under investigation for misallocated funds. Arliss Marin responds. My photo, cropped from the charity luncheon, sat beneath a fabricated quote about financial discrepancies. The byline wasn't from a real journalist. It was from a content mill that specialized in community news. My hands trembled, but not from fear. I clicked View Source. The article's IP address pointed straight to the Rellin corporate group. The coffee went cold beside me as I whispered, "So this is how they want to play." By mid-morning, compliance had already left a voicemail. "Please come in. We need to discuss the media situation." At work, whispers filled the hallways like drafts. Someone slid a note across my desk. "You should have retired gracefully." It was written in a familiar, looping hand. I took a breath and opened my paper trail folder. Screenshots, timestamps, the PDF from facilities, the proof of forgery and manipulation now had company. This smear campaign. When the meeting started, 3 people waited: PR, HR, and compliance. The PR head wore a look of practiced sympathy. "This is unfortunate. Arliss. Maybe a temporary leave while we clear this up?" I replied evenly. Policy 6.4 presumes integrity pending evidence. Unless you have any? They didn't. I took notes of every word, ending with, "Meeting concluded at 11:20 No evidence provided. At lunch, an email arrived from a journalist at the Austin Ledger. "Off record, this story stinks. You've been set up." He attached the same metadata I'd traced, edited from Kirill's father's construction firm server. My pulse steadied. Finally, I thought, someone else can see the smoke. That evening, I wrote my own statement. No anger, no adjectives, just facts. The dates, the donations, the compliance letters. I posted it publicly on LinkedIn with one line at the end. Facts remain calm even when people aren't. By dinner time, the Ledger published a new headline: "Forgery and False Attribution in Legacy Fund Case." They quoted me directly: "Truth doesn't retire." I closed the laptop, the screen still glowing against the dark. Outside, Austin's skyline pulsed faintly through the curtains, neon light brushing the silver frame of my glasses. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel erased. "They built the fire," I whispered, "but I brought the light." At 10:47 p. My porch light flared to life, washing the driveway in a hard white glow. The camera feed pinged my phone. A hooded figure stepped into view. Another waited by a running sedan. The first one bent down, left a manila envelope, and hurried back to the car. The engine revved once before fading into the distance. Inside the envelope lay a printed copy of the forged article. My face beneath the headline that accused me of fraud. On top of it, a single sheet of paper in bold font read, "Retire gracefully, or we'll help you." I didn't panic. I texted Dion next door to stay inside, switched the porch feed to continuous record, and called the non-emergency line at APD. As I sealed the envelope in a Ziploc bag, I realized the handwriting on the note had the same rounded loops as Carol's birthday cards. The phone began ringing again before I could sit. Blocked numbers, each call ending in silence, except one, an exhale, then a hissed word, "Pig." Click. I logged every timestamp, copied the call list into my digital log, and watched the porch replay. The camera caught half a license plate and the gleam of a Relin-branded sticker on the bumper. Minutes later, Dion texted me a photo from his blinds, the same sedan, idling under the street lamp. He'd recorded 30 seconds of the drop-off, framed clear enough to make out the shape of the envelope in the driver's hand. I thanked him and sent both clips to my cloud archive and to the Austin Ledger reporter who'd helped me expose the fake article. My email subject line read, "If they want daylight, give them noon." At midnight, a new voicemail appeared. Unknown number. The transcription auto-loaded. "Tell your guy to try again tomorrow. She didn't flinch. And make sure Mom knows the board letter goes out Monday. He won't risk APD over a note." "Keep your name out of it," a man replied. "Use the proxy." Carol's voice. And Williams. I listened twice. Breath held. Metadata confirmed the voicemail had been forwarded from a corporate pool line registered to Charles's firm. Their arrogance was a gift. They'd left the evidence for me. At 1:20 a.m., I sat at my desk drafting an email to my attorney, Dane. I attached the porch footage, Dion's photo, and the voicemail file. The subject, preservation letters, urgent. I requested templates for temporary restraining orders and placeholders for APD incident numbers. The night outside was silent again, but it didn't feel calm, just paused, waiting for my move. By 6:15, I was standing under the flat glare of fluorescent lights at the APD substation. The sergeant, younger than my son, took the statement seriously. He labeled the bagged envelope, issued me a case numbers, and said, "Don't open anything you didn't order. We'll canvass the street for the sedan." His tone carried the kind of quiet respect reserved for people who already knew how to protect themselves. At 7:30 a.m., Dane poured coffee in his downtown office as I walked him through the night. He listened, expression unchanged, then outlined the next moves like chess pieces. File for a temporary restraining order by noon. Serve preservation notices to every corporate entity tied to the Relins. Draft a memo to Meridian's board about Charles's interference clause violations. We'll invite them to a meeting at 2, he said. Recorded, they can choose the room or the courthouse. Before leaving, I called Lowell. His voice was tired, low. "Mom, I'm coming over." "No," I said, "I need you at work. We can't both be targets. I'll handle this." He hesitated, then whispered, "I'm sorry." I answered softly, "We'll use that apology later, today. We use facts." At 8:45, Dane's assistant hit send on the formal invitation. 1 page, plain language, meeting at 2 p.m., cease and desist, terms, evidence review. Failure to attend would trigger immediate filing at 4 hours. I closed my phone, exhaled, and looked at the morning light spilling through the office blinds. It was no longer the soft light of fear. It was the light before a storm that finally breaks in the right direction. At 1:58, Meme! The door opened, and Valora, Charles's sister, their family brand's strategic face, walked in before anyone else. She set her phone face down on the glass conference table. "Record this," she said quietly. "I'm changing my statement." For a moment, the hum of the HVAC filled the silence. Dane lifted a brow, pressed the record icon on his tablet, and nodded. I didn't speak. Years in leadership had taught me the strength of letting other people fill the silence first. Valora inhaled sharply. I saw the texts, the ones routed through the company pool line. I warned them about spoliation risk. William ignored me. Her voice cracked once, then steadied. "If he used the brand to intimidate you, I'm not shielding him." Her confession landed like a quiet detonation. No theatrics, just the sound of truth rearranging a room. At 2:03, the others arrived. William first, then Carol, followed by their counsel carrying sleek black portfolios. Their confidence faltered the moment they noticed the APD incident number glowing on the first slide of Dane's agenda. A discreet recorder blinked red in the center of the table. William tried for charm. "We're here to resolve misunderstandings," I answered. "Then let's define misunderstanding." Dane advanced the slide. My voice stayed even as I read from my printed statement: "Cease all forms of harassment, both direct and indirect. Retract the defamatory article within 24 hours. Issue a written apology to my grandchildren acknowledging the harm done, and reaffirm the Meridian Consulting Clause. Non-interference, non-defamation. Full separation of personal and professional conduct." Carol's eyes flickered. "You're overreaching." "No," I said. "I'm reading." Their counsel slid a single sheet across the table. "Our cease and desist. You've intimidated our clients with false accusations." Dane smiled the kind of smile that made rooms colder. He tapped the speaker icon, and last night's voicemail filled the conference room, the hiss of Kareel's voice ordering another visit, William replying about proxies. The C&D turned to ash between them. Retaliation, documented and recorded. I didn't move. I didn't need to. Dane took the floor. He projected the Meridian Consulting Clause on the screen, Section 4.7. "Any act by affiliated parties causing reputational harm shall trigger board review and liquidated damages," he said evenly. "Preservation letters were sent at noon. If you wish to discuss mitigation, now's your moment." Carol's counsel whispered urgently. The color drained from William's face. Valora leaned forward. "For the record," she said. I witnessed phrasing in internal messages. "Make her quit quietly." I disavow any participation in or awareness of physical intimidation. Her voice was clinical, every syllable cutting through air like a scalpel. Then my phone vibrated. A notification slid across the lock screen. "Austin Ledger, forgery and false attribution confirmed in legacy fund case." They'd published the corroborated timeline, porch video, voicemail metadata, the bumper sticker from Dion's footage. The conference room froze. Only the faint ticking of the wall clock marked time. Carol whispered. "You went public." I met her gaze. I stayed factual. Their attorney stood, asked for a hallway. 10 minutes later, they returned subdued, papers trembling slightly in his hand. My clients agreed to a written retraction, a permanent no-contact order, and an internal audit under counsel supervision. Dane adjusted his watch. "Board notice within 24 hours, he said, "or filing proceeds at 4 p.m. He glanced at me. I nodded once. When the signatures were inked, Valora didn't leave immediately. She lingered as the others gathered their things, her reflection fractured by the glass tabletop. "I raised a son," she said softly, "who confuses charm with character." "You can still raise a correction," I replied. Her eyes lifted, wet, human for the first time. She gave a small nod, then walked out. The door closed. Dane exhaled. "That," he murmured, "was surgical." I gathered my papers. Surgery saves what's still alive. Outside, Austin's afternoon light poured between the high-rises, gold against glass. My reflection stared back at me in the lobby window, steady, unbroken, mine again. By the time I reached the sidewalk, my phone chimed once more. 5:03 p.m. Special session notice, Meridian Board. I smiled, faint but certain. The next door was already opening. The email still glowed on my phone as the elevator climbed. Special session, 5:30 p.m. By the time the doors opened onto the 28th floor, Austin's dusk had turned the glass corridor into a mirror of flame and steel. My reflection followed me into the boardroom, briefcase in one hand, silence in the other. Inside, the table gleamed like a surgical field, 12 leather chairs, microphones wired, cameras blinking. Dane adjusted the screen brightness, his expression calm, surgical. At 5:31, General Counsel called the room to order. "This special session concerns retaliation, misrepresentation, and reputational harm under the Meridian Consulting Clause." Every phone faced down, recorders blinked green, the air tightened. I lifted my right hand. "I swear to provide a full and factual account." No one asked about emotions. This was not a room for pain, only proof. I began where humiliation had started, the wedding dinner, the spilled wine, the silence that followed. I listed dates, times, digital records, porch footage, the fake article, and the forged signature. Each entry had a timestamp. Each timestamp had a witness. "I am not seeking sympathy," I said, "only accuracy." Pen stopped moving. Someone coughed into a sleeve. Dane advanced the slides, one by one, each artifact landing like a quiet verdict. The voicemail, Carol's whisper ordering intimidation, the APD report, the porch footage, the Austin Ledger correction article already live. The board chair's jaw tensed. "These are public?" "Yes," I answered. "Transparency precedes damage control." Valora was next. Her tone was clean, almost clinical. "I can confirm the internal phrase, 'make our lease quit quietly,' existed in early drafts of a brand strategy memo. I disavowed it." Her eyes didn't seek mine. She was testifying for herself now. But truth has its own gravity. It pulls people upright. Then came the slide that turned numbers into weaponry. The audit chair, pale under the fluorescence, projected a chart, estimated losses from retaliation, legal fees, sponsorship withdrawals, clause-triggered penalties, red columns rising like warning flares. "Continuing exposure," he said, "could cost 7 figures. No one exhaled. The graph spoke fluently enough. Then the screen split. A live call, Carol, dialing in from a hotel ballroom, sequins visible at her neckline. "I was told this would be off record," she began. "Not anymore," the compliance officer replied. "Per the morality clause of your contract, failure to issue a retraction by midnight results in immediate termination." Carol blinked rapidly, the smile practiced but slipping. "You can't—" "We already have," he said. The feed froze on her open mouth, then disconnected. The silence afterward felt like mercy. Next, HR spoke. A director in navy blue pressed play on a tablet. The audio was grainy but unmistakable. William's voice in a staff group chat. "The fat pig's lawyer won't save her." Someone gasped. Someone else muttered, "Jesus!" Zero tolerance, the HR lead said simply. Motion to suspend pending investigation. 12 heads nodded. One hand shook. William pushed his chair back, eyes darting toward the exit. But no one looked at him. The chair cleared her throat. Final motion. Enforce all clauses as written. Liquidated damages. Retraction by 11:59 p.m. Full independent review. Motion seconded, another voice said. All in favor? Hands rose one by one until there were none left against. The gavel struck once, sound without echo. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just breathed, quietly, as the machinery of accountability finally did what decency should have done months ago. When the meeting adjourned, Dane gathered the folders with surgeon-like precision. Valora walked beside me to the elevator, saying nothing until the doors closed. You didn't gloat, she said softly. Boundaries aren't for celebration, I answered. They're for survival. On the street below, the city pulsed, neon over asphalt, cicadas humming against the hum of engines. It's not triumph, I said, watching the skyline fade into evening. It's a boundary. Valora nodded once, her profile half shadow, half light. Then keep it drawn. As she walked away, the first cool wind of night brushed past, lifting the last trace of boardroom air from my skin. My phone buzzed again. 5:03 p.m. Special session closed. Compliance filing complete. Beneath it, a new notification. 11:59 p.m. Deadline confirmed. Midnight would be theirs. Sunrise mine. At 12:01 My phone chimed once, then twice. Carol's statement was posted. A full written apology, exactly as ordered, time-stamped to the minute. Williams never came. By 12:05, Dane forwarded the automatic clause execution. HR suspension had shifted to termination review. My escrow account, those liquidated damages they once called nuisance pay, triggered itself. No celebration, just a fact. The system worked when I stopped asking for fairness and demanded structure. By dawn, the light on my porch burned soft and gold. Valora stood by the steps, holding the embroidered napkin she'd once taken from my table months ago. Her hands shook slightly. I wanted to bring this back, she said. I was part of making you quit. I opened the screen door, motioned her in, poured 2 coffees. She asked if there was a way to see Finn without reopening the cruelty that had built this mess. There is, I said. Written amends, no online performances, no more rebranding our lives. Respect or silence, nothing in between. She nodded. Relief and loss tangled together. When she left, the napkin stayed folded on the counter. Simple enough. At 9, I pulled on my volunteer shirt and drove to the community pantry on Guadalupe. The air smelled like oranges and disinfectant. Women my age nodded when I walked in. No pity. No whispering. They'd read the Ledger article. They knew what quiet endurance looked like. I signed the endowment papers, transferring a portion of the damages to a pantry fund in my husband's name for every grandmother who keeps people fed. The receipt printed slowly, tape curling like ribbon. I folded it neatly, proof that not all signatures come from lawyers. Around noon, Dane texted, Williams served, access revoked. 10 minutes later, another text arrived, from William himself. You ruined me. I didn't answer. I forwarded it to HR, tagged it for record, and put the phone face down beside the bread donations. Some boundaries deserve documentation, not dialogue. Late morning, I sat at Zilker Park watching Finn's soccer practice. Carol stood across the field, awkward, clutching a water bottle. When Finn scored, he ran toward both of us, laughter shaking the air. Carol came closer, voice careful. Therapy starts Monday. How do I make repairs? Show up 3 times in a row, I said. No cameras, no hashtags. For a moment, we both watched Finn chase the ball again, sun flashing off his shoes. Hope, uncomplicated, belonged to him. By afternoon, I opened my laptop and typed one more post. Short, factual, unflinching. The case is closed. The pantry fund is active. Respect is my minimum. No names, no victory. Just a photo of my porch and the folded napkin by the cup of coffee. Toward evening, I checked my online contracts. The unused event slots, once reserved under Kirill's sponsorship, were now reassigned to community weddings and caregiver reunions. I watched the calendar blocks flip from red to green. Somewhere she'd see the update and understand. Legacy isn't what you inherit, it's what you redirect. At twilight, Carol herself arrived. She handed me an envelope labeled Mom. Inside, a handwritten apology and her house key. We sat as the sky bruised blue. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, I said. It's ending the power you gave to a lie. She cried quietly. I didn't. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was maintenance, not mourning. The next dawn, I walked along Ladybird Lake, thermos in hand, the city just waking. I texted the pantry team, funds cleared, then sent Finn a photo of the ducks rippling across the water. The wind smelled clean, cedar and silt. I whispered into it, for myself more than anyone. My life is not a courtroom, it's a kitchen with the light left on. Looking back now, I realize that strength isn't loud, it's consistent. I didn't win by shouting or by breaking anyone down. I won by standing tall, by keeping records, by refusing to be erased. Every choice I made was a reminder that boundaries are not walls. They are doors you open and close on your own terms. If my story reached you today, I hope it reminds you to protect your dignity, your home, and your peace without losing your kindness. We all face moments when people test our worth. What matters is how calmly we prove them wrong. What about you? Have you ever had to draw a line to protect your peace? Tell me in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, type 1 or share where you're watching from. And if you want to hear more stories like this, about courage, love, and second chances, please subscribe to the channel and stay with me for the next one.